Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Good morning, Cinesmack! Welcome to Bout 157 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I'm your host, Gabriel Rowald, or as Mike likes to say, joining me tonight. What's that?
How dare
I? Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, our usual host, filmmaker and owner of Southsider Studios, Mike. Sounds like you learned English from Tonto, Keeler.
What it is, what it shall be, what it was.
Second, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Stink. Arizona Stink. Was that a Freudian slip?
Wait, what the hell? What did I do to you?
Oh my God, I can't read. Owner of Arizona Inc. Studios, Andrew. Take cover, Arizona. Here I come, Zunwald.
You are in more dire need of a blowjob than any white man in history.
And that may apply to me as well. Third, writer, actor, and director Kyle. It's like hunting with Ray Charles. Fine.
Pump Up the Volume really made me reflect on my life in the 90s, and I spent much more of it hairy than hard.
And last but not least, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom Happy Harry Hardon Haggis.
You're not going to continue this broadcast, are you, sir?
Absolutely.
Not funny. Not funny.
We're off to a good start.
Absolutely. It's perfect. So without further ado, let's poke the monkey and find out which films we're talking about in this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, combat correspondents and desert disc jockeys, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two airwave anecdotes are eager to entertain your ears. Is it indeed a good morning in Vietnam? Or will Pump Up the Volume strike Ages? In the first corner, from 1987, written by Mitch Markowitz and Adrian Cronauer, directed by Barry Levinson, starring Bruno Kirby, Forrest Whitaker, and Robin Williams. Good morning, Vietnam! In the second corner, from 1990, written and directed by Alan Moyle, starring Anthony Luke Lucero, Samantha Mathis, and Christian Slater. Pump up the volume!
Let's get right into it. Let's go into round one, writing. Kyle, you're on the air.
Oh, first time, long time. I just want to say I'll take my answer off the air. So just let me get this out there, and then I'll be gone. Writing. So let's take a look at the movies. Pump Up the Volume. Was it written? Somebody write this? It's basically Christian Slater doing a Jack Nicholson impression for a really long time. It's kind of an interesting idea, like a rebellious against a bad school kid, riling up his small suburban Arizona town. This movie completely missed me. I had never heard of this movie until we were doing this. So I was really kind of taken aback by had the 80s and 90s feeling of this movie. But I suppose, right, the idea is that there are things that need to change, and kids in the 90s are disillusioned and fed up with the way their society is going. And that's, I think, kind of a universal feeling that you can share amongst pretty much all of us or all teenagers at some point in their life. But it didn't really resonate with me. I didn't experience a lot of that when I was a kid, and I was a child of the late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, it's one of those movies that I think of where you're like, wow, this is a really kind of unique story to make a movie around. I think of movies like The Warriors or Break Into Electric Boogaloo or another Christian Slater like Gleaming the Cube. You're like, this is such a specific 90s, I don't know if I want to call it a genre, but feel of a movie. And I don't know, other than the subtext of hippies selling out to the man and the general malaise of kids in the 90s, there really is too much of a story in this that I enjoyed too much. Let's move on to Good Morning Vietnam, which I think has a much stronger narrative plot and drive to it, but it has a lot of trouble staying on task, and I think it spends too much time focusing on bits of the story. It focuses too much on pieces it should not focus as much on and give more time to other pieces of the story. It really vacillates between being kind of a feel-good comedy and a really depressing look at the Vietnam War. And I understand that's sort of kind of the point of it. I think the balance of it that it struck was not quite right for me. But at least it has a narrative drive and an arc. I guess Pump Up the Volume does as well, but it's much shallower and on a shorter timeline, I guess, and there's not as big of a change or arc in the character. He's starting disillusion and ends by sharing his disillusionment with other people. Whereas at the beginning, this happy-go-lucky guy arrives and then realizes the horrors of war because he's been isolated on this island in the middle of the Aegean Sea. Thanks for taking my call. I will take my answer off the air, Baba Booey.
Baba Booey. I have to agree with Kyle here. Pump Up the Volume, I remember being much better, and I think it's because I was watching it, at a much younger age. But as a middle-aged white guy, it's labeled as a comedy. I did not see any comedy in the film. I just felt bad for those kids. For me, it definitely was not a comedy, the way it was written. And I just remember watching it when I was younger, and it's just a totally different movie to me now. And I don't know if I've ever had a movie do that complete 180 to me before. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It was just kind of depressing to see what the kids were going through. The one kid that got kicked out, he just wanted to get back in. You had the perfect student who gets beat by her dad. They don't even mention it, but she shows up with a broken nose. I mean, it's a really sad look at suburban life, which we know that stuff happens, and it's very real, but don't label it a comedy. As far as Good Morning Vietnam, it's it's kind of almost like a MASH episode, right? Like you've got the humor, and then there's at certain points you have the horribleness of war, and it kind of brings both of them home to you. And you're absolutely right, Kyle. You're talking about someone that was on an island on Malta, or was it Malta, right? If I remember that right. And he gets sent to Vietnam, and
he was on the island of Crete.
Crete, yes. And he gets sent to Vietnam during, one of the big years where they're bringing more and more troops in, and he doesn't want to continue. He sees the ugly side of war. He doesn't want to continue, and then he sees how much he means to the troops. And then he's also trying to be the good person and help others around him, and it ends up biting him in the ass. But I do feel like Good Morning Vietnam may have had a longer script. I feel like there's something missing in it. As much as I enjoy the movie, I just feel like the third act is really quick, and I think there's like 15 to 20 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes of script that's missing from the movie. But that's my take. Baba Booey.
I'm wondering if the script was actually shorter and a lot of it was filled in by Robin Williams, because we all know how he likes to improv. And maybe, I don't want to take away from Gabe or anything, but if he has trivia and such on this, but he definitely likes to embellish. And so, you've got this story about something pretty simple, which is this radio guy in Vietnam. I would agree that I think the last act was very rushed. It felt like they were just trying to finish it to get the movie over with. But I don't know. I guess I look at it as they tried to bring in this lightheartedness a little bit to a conflict that was very controversial, and they brought to the audience the good and the bad of that conflict well on screen, and the, I guess, internal turmoil of Adrian, and how he was unable to just cope with probably what he didn't expect. It's that, you've heard it a lot from other war vets, especially like World War II, that have had interviews where they were excited to go to war until they get there. They just, the concept is just so fractured for a lot of those people. And I think that part of it came across well with somebody who is so vibrant and so out there as a Robin Williams, and playing the character as Adrian, who is this happy-go-lucky person that touched soldiers that were having shit days basically every day. And, it was a piece of happiness for him. I guess that's what I see about the way the story was told. As with Pump Up the Volume, it felt like every other teen angst story that was written in the 90s. And yeah, I'm the same way, Mike. Growing up, we watched that movie. We're like, yeah, we're going to start a pirate radio station. And we're going to save the world. And we're going to do all these cool things. And, none of that really happened. And this podcast is probably the closest we got. And we ain't saving anybody with it. But yeah, I mean, you watch it and you're just like, this. And maybe it is an age thing, because it's like, yeah, it kind of hits a little closer to home than it did when I was, 16, 15. So we'll talk about some other parts of it that I think shined over some of the writing, but it didn't feel different, I would say. But they did write boobs into it, and so that made it okay.
I mean, there's a handful. I mean, there were tons of movies like, mid 80s to mid 90s is kind of my media peak, when I was kind of like listening to the music that I still listen to today and the movies that I watched. And I don't know, Pump Up the Volume for me is still one of those. I don't know. It's still one of those movies that, is kind of I don't know, it's almost kind of part of like who I am. And when I saw Pump Up the Volume, and in the early 90s I wanted to be a record producer and I wanted to get into radio and music, and I don't know, it was a really powerful movie for me. I really liked it. Obviously, you know, things changed and, you know, took a different course, but I don't know, I sat through watching it and I just, you know, I just watching it, just thinking, I was like, I got the coolest fucking generation. Like, we're fucking awesome. Nobody even cares about us. Nobody thinks about us. We're just, you know, we have the best music. We've got the best movies, and it's freaking awesome. And I don't know. So that kind of hit me. What struck me about, I mean, and both of them both movies, you know, obviously they're radio based, but they're also about, you know, rebellion and fighting against the higher powers and against authority. And they both, I think the scripts in both of them do that fairly well. Pump Up the Volume gets some points for laying out some very stark and difficult things to talk about that was going on in high schools and back in the day, but are still going on, you know, today. We still have a lot of the issues that they talk about. It's just part of being an adolescent and being a teenager in America. There's just, you're going to have suicide, and you're going to have, you know, extreme pressure. You're being a, you know, incredibly smart kid trying to get into Ivy League school. I mean, it just comes with the territory. And Christian Slater has that speech where it's like, that's the deal, man. You live through this, and that's the prize at the end, is to say you got to live through it. So, Good Morning Vietnam. You know, I'm watching it, and it's hard because to judge the script, this is one of those bouts where who do we give the credit to for the acting and the writing? Like, it's back and forth, and like, is all of the radio stuff, was any of that scripted, or is that just Robin Williams being Robin Williams? So it's kind of like, how do you differentiate? So in terms of, you know, to keep things fair between the two of them, I kind of just say, you know, which story would you go based on? It's interesting to me that I watched Good Morning Vietnam when I was a teenager. And it's a little disappointing how little of the war stuff stuck with me. Like, I knew all of Robin Williams' radio bits in that movie. I had them all memorized. But all the stuff about, was it Tron being on, being a VC, and yeah, I had forgotten all of that shit. Like, all I cared about was the comedy as a kid. So it's almost like watching it for the first time. But yeah, I think they're both really good movies. They both kind of, I think they aged really well. There's a lot of movies from this era that did not. But you know, there's always someone above you kicking down. So it's you know, it's always going to find an audience when you make movies about, you know, rising up against authority.
Yeah, I was really surprised how dark the movie got at points, like what the inciting incident, I guess, for things to take a turn. Or I wasn't expecting that. But it was interesting. It's hard to say with Good Morning Vietnam, you know, who you give the credit for some of that stuff for. I think we'll talk, it might be more talking about that kind of stuff in directing. Because surely the ideas were there for some of that stuff, but it's hard to know when you have Robin Williams just going at breakneck pace, like what, if any of that was actually on the page.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Mike. The third act is way too short and abbreviated. It tries to add way too much like gravitas to the story, and I think it fails because of how short it is.
Yeah, and to Tom's point with the whole nostalgia, it's weird how you watch both of these movies when they first came out for us, and Pump Up the Volume hits, and you can relate to it so much better than, like you said, you watched it, and all the comedy stuff is the stuff that stuck out. But then you watch it as an adult, and it kind of reverses because you're looking at it from a different perspective. Now it's nostalgia with Pump Up the Volume, and you're like, wow, this was Vietnam, and this is probably really rough because this is probably some of the shit they went through, and that sucks. So it's an interesting complete 180 based on your age. So maybe that adds to the timelessness that you were talking about, Tom.
Yeah.
Not to say that either one is better than the other in that sense. It's an interesting twist on how your mind and you perceive the story.
Well, that's an interesting segue, isn't it, Gabe?
It is. And
you're welcome.
Thank you. Do you guys have any other stuff you want to say in this round? Any other writing thoughts?
No.
Okay. Well, let's get to some votes. Let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, I don't know. Just for originality's sake, I guess, and having such a unique idea for a film I never thought could be made, I'm going to go with Pump Up the Volume.
Okay. How about Mike?
Oh, boy. I think the thing that bothers me most is that those missing parts of that third act of Good Morning Vietnam. And I never thought I would say this comparing the two, but I'm going to go with Pump Up the Volume.
Okay.
But it should not be labeled as a comedy.
Definitely not funny. I agree with you, Mike. I didn't find it all that funny. I enjoyed it, but I didn't find it funny. Andrew.
Yeah. I love both of these movies, and I didn't think of some of the stuff. So I'm actually going to vote for Pump Up the Volume, which I didn't really expect myself to say. But
An unexpected round. And Tom.
Yeah, I'm going to go Pump Up the Volume. It took risks, and it took on some topics that I am surprised this thing got through development.
Agreed.
with a much grit as it did. So
yes.
Kudos to them.
Combining masturbation and suicide just doesn't seem like something.
Whoa. To that point, like I started it and I was like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of this stuff in it, but I think it's weird. It's really weird. But the masturbation stuff at the beginning of the movie, it gives more weight to the end. That this thing started as a lark, as a comedy show and stuff,
right.
and that he learns about the power of being on the radio. Damn it, I'm using up my overall shit. But I think it's weird, but that stuff you almost kind of need it so that the end has more weight. It's kind of like a teeter-totter effect.
And the segue into the letters and the actual shit that's really happening. Sorry, yeah. We're like in the sorry. Yeah, see, that's my overall stuff.
Sorry.
Now we're gonna have a
sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Damn it.
Yeah, sorry.
Mike, you're gonna have to do.
Will you take that part and just cut it and put it at the very end?
Yeah.
Where we're
yeah.
Look
make
at Mike.
Tom.
Mike's like,
sure.
Tom will leave you some silence near the end. So just insert here.
You always do.
Okay, now for a little trivia. Something I like to refer to as smacktoids.
Those sound painful.
They do. There's this cream I recommend. We'll get to that later. The writer of Good Morning Vietnam, Mitch Markovitz, began his career by writing for television shows like MASH. Mike, I think you mentioned how it felt similar to MASH.
Yes.
And Van Dyke and Company, which I'm honestly not familiar with. It was his first film, and he spent almost 2 years writing it. He even traveled to Bangkok, as Vietnam was still closed after the war, in an attempt to make the movie as authentic as possible. He also said, I met the real Adrian Cronauer once, maybe twice. Honestly, he wasn't interesting to me. He was a nice man, but he was very square, a nerdy type guy. I listened to some of the tapes of his show too, but they weren't very humorous or inspiring either. So I just went off and did this on my own, which I find really funny because you're under the impression that this guy, the real Adrian Cronauer, was some kind of like, comedian and was really
Right.
inspiring. But it sounds like he was more like the square guys in the movie,
Right.
which I found really funny.
Bruno Kirby,
And then-
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then for Pump Up the Volume, the first version of Moyle's script was called Radio Death. It followed a young pirate DJ's final broadcast, one that he promises will end in his own death by suicide, and where he ruminates on all the different ways he might end his life. But as the show continues, and as the listeners hang on, it becomes clear that he doesn't actually plan to go through with the act.
Huh.
And then also for Alan, I think it's Alan Moyle, he said, looking back on his career, the now 73-year-old Moyle often focuses on the compromises he had to make or were imposed upon him in order to get his films done. Some people, this is a quote from him, some people in the clusterfuck of people that want to make movies always want to sanitize. They'll deny it, but but what they want secretly is for the movie to appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know how to make a good movie, but I know how to make a bad movie, and that's to try to appeal to everybody.
Wow,
I thought that was kind of
that's a really
Very
good
wise.
quote.
I thought that was a great quote from him,
Now-
and I agree with.
Devil's advocate. Pump Up the Volume was rated R, and the people that really needed to see it and wanted to see it couldn't get in.
Some irony there, yes.
Legally
Yeah.
get in,
Yeah.
but I'm guessing
Legally
there
get
were
in.
a lot of. There were a
Yeah,
lot of
I didn't learn about sneaking into rated R movies until T2. So
I mean,
I got
it
stuff
was
about T2. I can't wait.
it was kind of pirating. So you were slipping into a rated R movie. It was not a no. So kind of fits.
yeah, my own little rebellion.
Okay, fellas, let's move into round 2, acting. Mike, we're going live in 3, 2, 1.
What do I do with my hands?
Yeah,
wait,
see, I can't do that. I can't do that on a podcast.
we're
Normally, I would have stopped at 3 and then
Do I
did
just-
yeah.
all
Yeah,
right,
you know what to do. You
Yeah.
watch Pump Up the
I
Volume.
did.
You know what to do with your hands.
all right, let's start with Good Morning Vietnam. I mean, the elephant in the room is Robin Williams. I love Robin Williams. I know that there are people out there that find him ridiculous or annoying, but I just love how his brain works. And I wish I could be that quick. And I'm not comparing him to you, but Kyle, you are a very quick mind, and I love that about you. Like, you just have this comedic quickness to you that I enjoy immensely. And Robin Williams has that in spades. Like, you can just see his brain working. And I'm guessing that there was a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor with him doing his DJ work. Hence, the montages of him running, grabbing records and all that. And they just picked out their favorite parts. Seeing Forrest Whitaker so young, like, I always make the joke from one of the Friday movies about giving someone the Forrest Whitaker eyes, but I really like him as an actor. Like, he is just very sincere, and he is very sincere in this film. Bruno Kirby, let's just call him what he is. And his name just Joe Pesci light. He has the same Joe Pesci voice, and for a long time, before we had IMDb, I had always thought in my head that Joe Pesci was in Good Morning Vietnam, but it's actually Bruno Kirby. And I really liked Noble Willingham as General Taylor. J.T. Walsh. I thought that they surrounded him, at least with the military personnel. They were great supporting cast to let Robin Williams just go off. And then you talk about, I'm not even going to try to say their names, but the Asian actors were pretty good, especially the younger guy that turns out to be part of the VC. I thought he was trying to moat really well, especially at the end. I think he was doing his best when he's talking about watching his family die and why he is Viet Cong. But I also really liked the people that Robin Williams was teaching English to. I think they were just a fun little eclectic group of people, and I don't know if they were acting really, like maybe English definitely was their second language, and they were just told to go this way, go that way. I don't know. I would love to see all that footage of him in the classroom with those people. I think it would just be hilarious.
Yeah, and just by the way, I have a small amount of trivia about that.
Okay, and
you can ruin it. I don't.
No,
care.
I'm not going to ruin it. But I wanted to give a shout out to Censor 1 and Censor 2, Dan Stanton and his brother Don Stanton, who were both in Terminator 2 as the guard.
Yep.
And because I looked at him, I'm like, oh my God, it's them.
Yeah.
They're also in Gremlins too. So they have
really?
a thing
They
of
are?
being,
Oh.
yes, they're the two guys in the lab that are experimenting on all the Mogwais and the Gremlins and the animals.
Oh my God, I totally
crazy.
forgot about
They're
that.
in
their heyday
twos.
back then.
They're in twos in every movie.
Yep.
They're in the seconds.
Awesome.
And let's move on to pump up the volume real quick. Christian Slater, I can take it or leave it. Samantha Mathis, same. No one really kind of stood out acting wise for me, except his dad. It really bugged me. I'm like, I know that guy. I know what movies he's been in, and I think there's just something there. He's very familiar looking to me because I believe I knew someone that looked a lot like him. Because I looked up his movies, I'm like, no. But Annie Ross, who played the principal, the minute she was on screen, I had terrifying flashbacks from the first time I watched Superman 3 when I was a kid, and she's the lady that gets turned into the android or whatever by the machine that just scared the ever living crap out of me when I was a kid. So that helped her being a principal to me. Like there's no separation there. And then there's Holly Sampson, who plays Cheryl Biggs, which you can go ahead and Google her. She went on to have a career in adult films, along with also being in, I think it's Boy Meets World? Or no, The Wonder Years. It was Fred Savage's love interest in the Wonder Years episode, The Summer Song. And then, she kind of got into the Skinamax shows and then became an adult star. Don't ask me why I know that.
We know.
Yeah. And then a very young Seth Green. Holy crap. Which, if you guys are on the live stream, you can see Gabe's avatar of the absolutely probably 10-year-old Seth Green. I know he's not 10. I know he's not 10. But I'm sorry, I have babbled on way too long. You guys go.
All right, so Mike, since you mentioned me, I will step in here. Thank you for comparing me to Robin Williams. I'll take that as a compliment. Although I got to say, in this movie, and it's going to be controversial, I know we don't have too much time left, I really started to get the feeling that there's a very fine line between Robin Williams and Nick Cage. And here's why I say that. There are times Nick Cage is doing something in a movie that it seems other people are unwilling or it is impossible to stop him from doing them. I felt that way in this movie about Robin Williams. He felt manic. Later in his career, I think it got more controlled, and that may be, we're seeing that behind the scenes where directors are cutting more or giving him more direction or something like that. But he appeared to be a man in the midst of a breakdown, like from the beginning. He was, I don't know if that legitimately is just the way Robin Williams has been his entire life, if he was having substance abuse issues, if he has undiagnosed behavioral issues, but he seemed absolutely manic. And it reminded me of someone who so desperately needs like attention and praise. And it kind of made me sad. And it made me think like, wow, there's not much difference between this guy sometimes, between him and Nick Cage. And I never thought I would think that. But I will give Robin Williams credit for this. He got much, much better as his career went on. Also, he plays the quiet moments very well. They can get him to settle down. They can get him to deliver some dramatic things. But sometimes when he is off on his rants, it feels unhinged and manic and like no one is in control, not even him. And he is basically just holding everything hostage. So that started to bug me. The other actors in the movie, the higher ups and the people, like I love the general. You can't cast a better dickish like lieutenant guy than whoever played Phil Dickerson, whatever his name was. Bruno Kirby looking incredibly young. Glad to see they brought in the least funny person from City Slickers and put him in this movie. His assistant is a guy I know, but I cannot remember his name now, but he's got such a recognizable face as a character actor. But yeah, the Asian actors, and I would assume a lot of the people they had were locals. A lot of stuff, especially the baseball game, times where he's giving, like talking to people and making jokes, seems very real and authentic. Doesn't seem like they're coaching actors. Pump up the volume. Christian Slater did a lot of heavy lifting in this movie, and I give him credit for that. He's basically monologuing for long stretches of this movie, and he remains interesting, and you remain interested in what he's saying and what's going on. His character is interesting. The growth and arc are interesting. Samantha Mathis, I think, would go on to do much better films when she was Daisy in Super Mario Brothers, but a good start. This was her debut film. Seth Green, I don't know that he's ever had a first movie. He might be like The Big Bang has just always existed, because I feel like I just constantly see him in movies and I'm like, God, how young was Seth Green here? And it just keeps happening to me. So I don't know how far it gets pushed back. Was he the Gerber baby or some shit that I don't know? But the principal you speak of in Pump Up the Volume reminded me of the principal from Grease. Obviously, the principal from Grease is much nicer, and this principal is an evil bitch, but they have kind of a similar, like, motherly look. And, like, there's a real interesting ragtag group of, like, late 90s ne'er-do-wells, which I kind of found interesting to some point, but it is, like, blart the 90s all over your face. Like, this is what we think high school's like. But I would have been the fat kid selling tapes, so I'm all right with that. So I'm going to move on because that's a lot of time. But thank you, Mike, for comparing me to someone with an undiagnosed mental illness who doesn't know when to stop talking.
It was not the undiagnosed mental illness. It is your comedic.
I understand.
It is your comedic brain.
Much like Robin Williams, I can't help myself from making a joke.
See?
Yeah, that was actually, Kyle, you touched on the one thing I was that we hadn't really brought up was the baseball game. It felt very almost improvised. Like it was just, we're going to do this, and Robin Williams kind of just coached these people, and it seemed very natural. Like it wasn't actually a scene set up where we're doing this, and this. They just kind of went with it. I would say that Christian Slater, the way that he portrays his radio persona versus his school persona really adds to the way that the movie pushes itself along. I see that during that school time, the movie is just kind of in this low drag, and you're kind of getting that build up where he's not really all that interesting, and you're just excited to get him back to the radio because the radio is where he shines. And it really kind of mimics the story that's going on. And I feel like he did a really good job of pulling across all of from the weird to the serious at the same time. That conversely goes with Robin Williams. You know, yes, he can be over the top. He can go crazy. He was manic at times with some of his crazy. And you're right. It is possible that while they were shooting this, they couldn't rein him in. But his serious and his moments of solace really show through of him as an actor. And even if you look later down his career, 1 hour photo is another real serious Robin Williams. You're like, wait, this is Robin Williams, and he has this moment, the solace in him that you can just see. So I know that he can act. I think he just loved being funny, and he loved being the center of attention, and he just had to let it out. And I think that's where some of that, as Kyle said, manic over the topness comes from. But, you know, I don't want to repeat a bunch of stuff because we've talked about some of the same thoughts. We're all pretty like-minded with some of the stuff, I guess. Tom?
There you go, Tom.
Yeah,
You got a minute.
Great.
Wow.
Thanks. Jesus. Yeah, that's okay. None of you get to talk during overall. So, yeah, like Mike said, this is a character actor bonanza. Good Morning Vietnam, and you've got Bruno Kirby, Robert Wall, Forrest Whitaker, somebody else's name that I can't read. What's his name?
J.T. Walsh. Are you thinking of J.T.
Yeah,
Walsh?
J.T. Walsh. And then Richard Edson was the parking attendant from Ferris Bueller. And he was in 8 Men Out, and he's a great character actor. But yeah, I think this category is kind of a little bit lopsided. There's just so many great actors in Good Morning Vietnam. And, you know, it's hard to, you know, beat Robin Williams. I went back and looked because I knew that this was, I think, the first time Robin Williams had been nominated for Best Actor. And you do that thing where you pull it up and you're like, all right, well, he didn't win. Who won that year? And you're like, oh, Michael Douglas for Wall Street. Well, shit, I can't really take that away from him. So you can't really, this was a really good performance, but obviously he'd go on and win for something better with Good Will Hunting. So, I think, they're all just really solid acting throughout Good Morning Vietnam. And part of the time, I like Christian Slater's acting, and I think he's fun to watch. And I don't know why he's just such a fucking cool guy. It just, it's he just does it so well. And I just want him to be my friend. But anyway, not Christian Slater, but like the characters he plays. Just like you just want to like hang out with this character from this and Cleaning the Cube. So
Did anybody have their hair cut like Christian Slater? The down the middle part of them, kind of the floppy.
Dude, look at this.
The
Look at this rat's nest. Are you kidding? No, I look like Seth Green, but like
I don't have
you were
any
in
hair.
the Seth Green. Okay, yeah.
Seth Green at 4 a.m.
Okay. Any other thoughts on acting?
Nope.
Okay. Let's take some votes. Mike.
I'm going with Good Morning Vietnam.
All right. And Andrew?
I am going with Good Morning Vietnam.
And Tom?
Good morning, acting category.
All right. And finally, Kyle.
I am going to go.
Oh, you cut out, Kyle.
Yeah, I think you cut
I'm
out
gonna
there,
go
Kyle.
with Bump Up the Volume.
Oh. It's getting interesting.
Is it?
Okay. I don't know. Is it? I mean, we're trying.
We're
trying to
halfway
be
there.
interesting.
No,
We're working on it.
We're past the halfway point. Good job, guys.
Yeah. I've got a few more smactoids for you, and I think these actually kind of show the contrast between the acting styles. between the main actors in these movies. The writer of Good Morning Vietnam said, Robin, of course, was brilliant. He did a lot of ad-libbing, particularly when he was on the radio. I didn't like some of it, but some of it I thought was inspired. And then Roger Ebert said, Levinson used Mitch Markovich's script as a starting point for a lot of Williams' monologues, and then he let the comedian improvise. Then he put together the best parts of many different takes to create sequences that are undeniably dazzling and funny. Williams is a virtuoso. So, as we suspected, there was just a crazy amount of ad-libbing, probably throughout the whole film, of Good Morning Vietnam.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's not really all that surprising, honestly.
Yeah.
It feels like that, especially in the scene. I thought when he was talking to the soldiers, I felt like they just put him in front of these soldiers and just let him go, and they filmed it, and then they took the stuff that they liked. Pump Up the Volume director Alan Moyle's first choice was John Cusack because he saw a natural darkness in him. But the actor declined the role. He was just coming off of Cameron Crowe's Say Anything and had decided he wasn't going to play any more high schoolers. Later it says once Slater memorized the words, he stuck to them. Going against, and this is I find kind of ironic, going against Moyle's preferred improvisational style. The director sees what he writes as simply a starting point, then hopes the actors will come up with their own material in the moment. So interestingly, the director wanted Slater to be more improvisational, but Slater was not. He memorized it and read it basically word for word. So it's interesting to me that the contrast between those two styles. So. Okay, well, let's get into the third round, directing. And now we go to Andrew.
Is this on? Can you? Am I live?
Caller,
you're live.
On the air.
We're live.
You're live.
We're live. I'm on the air.
The red light is on.
How long have I been on? Shit.
Damn
it. Okay, so directing. Let's start with Pump Up the Volume with Alan Moyle, which Moyle just sounds like an unfortunate last name, but I don't know why. It's just, it sounds, that sucks. But he did Pump Up the Volume, and then he did also Empire Records. He did Jailbait. And then after roughly that early 2000 movie, he did a lot of 90s here and there. He kind of just fell off. Didn't really do anything. He did a couple of TV shows. I find it interesting. If you've seen Pump Up the Volume, Empire Records, Jailbait, New Waterford Girl, they have a similar kind of theme to them. So it's interesting that he gravitated towards kind of these lighthearted that turned very dark and deep movies that he ended up directing. Jailbait is about a freshman that gets accused of raping a sophomore while he was in high school. Empire Records, about running a record store and learning to become an adult, basically. And so there's all these kind of coming of age stories that he really pushed, especially during the 90s. And I don't know. I just find that very fascinating that he kind of stuck with a similar genre and continued down that with what he did, and then it just kind of stopped. We talk a little bit in directing about, shots and things that happened during the movie to get the story across, and I wouldn't say that there was really some cinematography shots and pump up the volume that I was just like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I don't think there was anything in there. It was competently directed. I feel that while he's in his room or in the basement and he's broadcasting, though, the way that the camera kind of keeps pace with Christian Slater's monologue, I thought was very well done and really drove home the intensity, because the camera would be like stationary while he's talking, doing a phone call. And then as his character got revved up and started monologuing and started getting more and more, the camera was moving more, it was cutting more, it was shifting across the room more. And I thought that was an interesting take on getting that intensity across to the audience, not just through the vocals and through what Christian was saying, but actually through the visual part of what you were watching. So I found that to be a very effective choice. Barry Levinson for Good Morning Vietnam obviously has worked with Robin Williams multiple times. He did Toys, which Robin Williams is also in. So evidently Good Morning Vietnam wasn't enough for him to be like, I'm never working with Robbins again. But he also did Rain Man, Bugsy, Tin Men. The list kind of goes on all the way up, again, through about the 90s. Wag the Dog, Sleepers, Sphere. He kind of just drifts off then and has a few things in 2000. And then, yeah, he's picking, there's a lot of TV movies, a lot of TV series in there. Nothing real big, it looks like, that he came out of. I would say that all of these films, especially these ones that were early and right up next to Good Morning Vietnam, Tin Men is a great movie. Rain Man, Bugsy, Toys, these are all, Wag the Dog is a fantastic movie. These are all really good movies. I would like to say that, and this might potentially scoot a little into music, so sorry, Tom, if you were going to drop me out on that, but I thought that one of the best scenes in Good Morning Vietnam was when they're showing the war-torn Vietnam and they're doing all of the big wide shots and they're playing What a Wonderful World behind it. That is such just a pivotal moment in the movie that shifts us from that lighthearted, goofy Robin Williams into this is a dark, deep, serious thing that is going on or was going on in this moment. And it's probably one of my favorite moments in the entire movie is when he plays that. And there are some rough scenes that they shoot in that. So I thought that was really amazingly done. I really hope that a lot of the stuff, which I don't know, but trivia-wise, I would really hope that they had pulled some real Vietnam, equipment, aircraft, maybe even some old footage, because there's a lot of shots that are very authentic looking, especially some of the larger pan shots of a lot of the helicopters, a lot of the boats going through. So I think it would be very fascinating to know if some of that is actual Vietnam footage, because it looks pretty darn good. So, yeah, I'll shut up now because there's other people that want to talk. And, yeah, there you go.
I don't I don't know. I can't agree with you on the Louis Armstrong thing. And here's why. It's not Levinson's fault, but it seems like after he did this, and they were like, oh, you can get a lot of emotional impact by juxtaposing songs and what you're seeing on screen. And in the 33 years, 33? No, because it's older than that. 36 years since this movie came out, it's been done to death. And it's lost its impact. And I can't fault Levinson for that. But it's just that, I don't know. It's, I just feel like there's a lot of, when you put this movie after you've seen a movie like Platoon, or Casualties of War, it's really hard to watch a movie like Good Morning Vietnam and not feel like some of the war stuff is sugared down or watered down. And it just, I don't know. It seems like a weird place to place a comedy like Good Morning Vietnam. And I think we talked about just how difficult it was to balance the comedy and drama in this. And it just kind of whips you back and forth so quickly. And it seems like that culminates with that song. And so I have a problem with it. I know it's not his fault because of everything that's happened since then and everyone he influenced, but it just doesn't punch like it did, 30 years ago.
Don't you think that's part of the irony, part of the macabre that is going on, is that whiplash, is that going back and forth from that dark to the light, back to the dark?
I mean, yeah, in a way, but I don't know. It's just,
I'm trying to be deep, Tom.
All I could think about watching it was that I bet this was really powerful 30 years ago. And it didn't hit me now because I'm more cynical about war and the use of music like that to, put a beautiful song up against something so horrendous that was still kind of, it's still not nearly as horrendous as some other war movies that there was a lot uglier stuff going on behind the scenes of that. So, but I agree with you on Alan Moyle's direction and Pump Up the Volume. I thought it was excellent. And there are some really brave choices that I think you would have trouble making in a movie today that, I don't think Pump Up the Volume gets the credit it does for taking such a real hard, honest look at, being a teenager in American high school. Obviously it has kind of the same problem that we have, that we've seen grittier and, more disturbing movies like about that. But, yeah. So, I just, I'm kind of criticizing one and awarding the other for the same fault, but yeah, Pump Up the Volume.
You cynical old man.
I know. Fuck off.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting playing a sweet or standard old song like that over scenes of violence is a very overused shorthand to create a sort of dichotomy of human existence. You have this wonderful song about beautiful things in the world, and then you contrast that with shots of terror or horror or whatever negative emotion you want to portray. It is a powerful tool, but it is something that has been used to death in films. Hearing about them using a lot of the cuts of Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, piecing it together, I kind of understand that's kind of what you have to do, because I imagine it's so frantic, and it's probably an editor's nightmare, though, to piece those bits together. I will give Barry Levinson credit, as I do I think I have for every director that's worked with Robin Williams, for kind of keeping him contained at points. But there are definitely times when he loses control, and I think that's probably intentional. He wants to get some of that magic that he can produce. But there are times when it's not reeled in very well, and it comes across, I don't know, just very strange and manic to me. It's very kind of flatly shot, and it's very drab color-wise, other than when he gets out like into the city, which I enjoyed seeing some of that. So, I think it's a competently directed movie, but there's not a lot going on that really excites me. I do want to say, though, I agree with Andrew on Pump Up the Volume. That movement around in the basement when he's broadcasting is very much like almost what you would see in I don't know if you call it like a thriller or horror or whatever, like it's getting closer and further away. It's moving with him. It's ramping up with his excitement and his changes. And for whatever reason, I started to think about in this movie that Christian Slater is kind of playing a version of a Batman. He is struggling between his alter ego and the real him, and having trouble reconciling the two. And his world becomes more and more complicated as they start to meet. And he is trying to decide which one is like the real him, because he's very resistant to being out in the open doing the things he is. He's much more comfortable in the shadows, being an agitator. And Samantha Mathis is kind of his driver to get him out into the world, you know, doing what she thinks is making a real difference in these people's lives. And the movie kind of ends with all these other, you know, shortwave radio stations popping up where kids are talking to kids about problems of their days. And I suppose that's kind of a hopeful end message, that people are communicating more and trying to solve problems and putting themselves out there. I really was waiting. This movie felt so 90s. I was waiting at the end for like a freeze frame of like Mark Davis served 15 years in federal prison for FCC, blah, 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 you know, and like I was waiting for something like that to like see what happened to them. But it really just ends on like kind of a, I don't know if you call it a feel good moment, but him making a difference kind of moment. Yeah, they let the actors kind of breathe and play. They have some interesting choices. Their kissing scenes, their romantic scenes are very strange. They won't stop licking their lips and opening their mouths at each other, which I was a teenager once. That wasn't a thing for me, I suppose. But it was kind of odd. Yeah, and boobs.
What year were you born there, Kyle?
So 83. So I would have
probably
been. Oh, so I missed it. There was a lot of open mouth gawking.
You missed the licking lips, open mouth movement.
Yeah,
you know, I don't think I ever had a. Wow.
That's why everyone over the age of like 44 has chapstick in their pocket.
Wow. I thought it was just because of your old dry beef jerky lips. But now I know. It's
well, you know, tomato.
Right. But I also never had a manic pixie girl get topless in my backyard that I can remember. But
you're missing out.
I know.
The point.
I love the we have to shoehorn a car chase into this movie at the end, where giant FCC vans are chasing this Jeep. It is hilarious. I was just like, I can't believe they're going to end this movie in a chase, and they really did. They even got a helicopter and everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. Yeah, what a quintessential 80s and 90s movie. I can't believe I've never seen it. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts.
Okay. Did everybody get a chance?
I did not, but just
go for it.
I want to say once again, I think Good Morning Vietnam suffers from that third act, and I feel like there should have been more showing of how long he was there. Right? To me, it just felt like he was there and gone. Like there's no real timetable for how long he was broadcasting for. And I think that kind of hurts it a little bit. I agree totally with when Christian Slater is down in his basement. Kyle, I never thought about the Batman analogy, but now every time I think of the movie, I'm going to think about Batman. So thank you for that. Because it's true. One thing that bugged me, I mean, both of these films are kind of standardly shot everywhere else, right? Like, Good Morning Vietnam. I know you guys talked about the musical interludes, but I did like the shots of what was going on outside. You know, like they would show the servicemen listening at whatever base they were at, or it would show the rice fields. And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, you could have picked some more picturesque looking shots, but maybe that's not what they were going for, more of the realism. I don't know. Or they just didn't have the budget. And then going back to Pump Up the Volume, there was one scene where she pulls him into the art class, and instantly when they cut to it, showed her starting to open the door. I'm like, oh, the camera's going to blow out, because I saw the ND, and this is not the director's fault, but I saw the ND on the windows of the door. And yep, sure enough, camera image gets blown out for a little bit. She brings him back in, and it blows out again and goes back to normal. I'm like, I wonder if this was just like a pickup shot, like that they had to get done real quick. And that's nothing against him. It was just something that stood out to me. But I think for me, the putting something out like this in the 90s, the early 90s, like 1990, where you're dealing with kids committing suicide, and someone wrestling with the fact that they're gay and that they're being humiliated for it, and then everyone else writing in letters, and they're just trying to speak. But I think looking back on that now, it's like, yeah, that's a great thing. And then I think about now with social media and how maybe too much togetherness is a bad thing. So I go back and forth on that. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Any other thoughts on directing?
No, we're good.
Them,
All right.
them people did good things. Camera.
Yeah, they
Film
make the camera
things.
go vroom vroom.
Yeah. And the film go.
Dolly pan tilt.
I like it. That's our other
it's all
podcast.
pan up, pan down.
Hey.
Zoom.
Enhance.
Don't forget. Yeah. Okay, let's do some.
Let's bring this back in.
Yeah, let's do some voting. Andrew.
I am actually gonna go with Pump Up the Volume.
Okay. And Tom?
I believe I'm going to go with Dolly as my favorite camera move. I'm sorry. Pump Up the Volume.
Oh, okay. I thought you would for sure go for the zoom. I know you like zooms.
I'm not lazy.
Okay, Kyle.
I'm going to choose the vertigo shot, where they push in but zoom out. That's my favorite.
Yeah,
dolly
that's
zoom.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called?
The Dolly Zoom.
Dolly Zoom. Well, I got a new stripper name.
Because you dolly and you zoom at the same time.
Yeah, I know her.
I got to wear like a Flash outfit, and I'll be Dolly Zoom in a big blonde wig. So for directing, yeah, I'm surprised by this, but I'm going to give it to Pump Up the Volume as well.
Okay. And Mike.
Going into this, same thing. I can't believe I'm saying it. Pump Up the Volume.
All right. Now that was actually a surprising wrap.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, a little bit of smacktoids here. Good Morning Vietnam director Barry Levinson said to Robin Williams, "So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give hand signals to the camera guys, and you just start talking. Wander around, pick up the main points of the scene, but let's not be bound by the script." That also happened in the softball game, and this harkens back to something I think Andrew was talking about earlier. It also happened during the softball game scene. I didn't want to explain how to play the game. One of the Vietnamese actors was holding a melon, and he asked me, "I've seen a softball, and this is not that." What he's talking to Robin about on screen is literally for real. He doesn't think that the equipment is correct for what we're going to do, and that's just a real sequence. But it also serves the film because you're getting the personality of these people as opposed to lines that they're trying to say.
It's amazing.
So, yeah, and I think a lot of those people who were in his English class and that kind of thing were not actors. They were just real people in these scenes, and I think that that's that scene where they play softball is part of that. So
that
I found
really it really shows through too.
And I think that says something about a directing style, and maybe that's not normally Barry Levinson's style, but to be able to know what you have, the talent that you have, and the moments that you have, and be able to just kind of roll with it, says something, because I think at times it's hard, and it does. I think, I don't know, Kyle or somebody said something about like it had to be hell for the editor, because you take all this random footage and try to put it together into a cohesive scene. That's challenging. But I also think it says a lot about a directorial style to be able to roll with it.
And on film. Remember, they were editing film.
Yeah.
They weren't editing digital. This was a linear editor.
Yeah, and it says something about budget then too.
Yeah.
If you can roll that much film and throw so much of it away, that says something. So Alan Moyle, director of Pump Up the Volume, had previously directed 1980s Times Square. Now, I'm not familiar with that. Are any of you guys familiar with that?
I am not.
Though it's now considered a cult classic because of its punk and new wave influences, making it was a traumatizing experience. During post-production, the film was taken away from him by producer Robert Stigwood, who cut the scenes that made the lesbian relationship between the two teenage leads obvious rather than implied. Moyle vowed to only write movies and to never direct again. Now, I don't think that's the case, obviously, because he did do Pump Up the Volume. He directed again. But that might have something to do with what Andrew was talking about, how his directing career kind of, faded over time. And I think maybe he had a lot of not so pleasant experiences in his, directing career, and caused him to maybe kind of just rethink it.
And maybe he was born in the wrong era, because, today stuff like that's a little easier to push through with a lot of the indie stuff, and, people producing their own films because they don't care about what the mainstream wants or what, a company wants. And so they do their own thing. So,
yeah, there are a lot more avenues now to get your content out there the way you want.
Correct. Right. And back then he maybe didn't have those options. And so that's,
I'm sure he didn't.
That's unfortunate. I mean, Times Square was 1980 and he didn't do Pump Up the Volume until 1990. So he waited a whole decade before he did anything.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not looking at his IMDb page right now. I don't know if he had any other things in between that he directed, but
he had no writing and no writing or directing in between the two.
Yeah. So that must have been a pretty bad experience for him. And, I think it says something that he came back to it and actually made a pretty decent movie in the process. But I think he also had some trials and tribulations during the making of Pump Up the Volume as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a tough business to be in. All right, let's move on to round 4 overall. Tom, we're rolling.
We're rolling. So what we've got?
Rolling.
All right. So we're rolling. We're rolling.
Not yet.
Tom,
not
this
yet.
Is the booth.
We were rolling.
We
but
were
now
rolling. Hold on.
Now we're stalling.
Okay.
Now it's total.
Right.
Okay, we're rolling again.
You're just chewing up my time, aren't you? This is because you aren't going to talk the rest of the time when I'm done with you.
Hey, Tom, this is Clem Fandango. Can you hear me?
Y'all are mute your asses. I think Pump Up the Volume and Good Morning Vietnam are interesting because they came about a time that you'd kind of consider kind of the twilight of the radio era. It was really soon after Pump Up the Volume came out that, the internet started to take off, and Mike touched on this a little bit with social media, that this way to put yourself out there anonymously and, spread wisdom or hate or love and put yourself out there. And Pump Up the Volume does a really good job of showing kind of what the power of radio was. And for a lot of us, radio was really kind of a one-way communication device. I think Alan Moyle does a really good job of taking it and turning it into a two-way street with the letters coming in and the way that Mark impacts the lives of the other students at the high school. Good Morning Vietnam does it in kind of the same way, except, we wait for a while before Robin Williams kind of learns the impact that his show is having on the troops and how important it is to them. And I don't know, it's interesting to me that he would be such a savvy on-air personality and not fully appreciate the impact he was having. Like, it seems very weird to me that he would not, it wouldn't even cross his mind that he was having an impact on the troops. I mean, obviously surely he would go home at night and think about that. So, so moving forward, then, the internet comes along, and now we've got this new way to communicate with each other. And we have podcasts and social media, and we're interacting in completely different ways. So on one hand, it's really amazing to me that these two movies hold up as well as they do in terms of the message that they're having, because if you really think about it, radio is a real archaic way. It's a real archaic media in that it's the two-way street's very clunky and slow, and but there is this power through anonymity that that we still have today, with Reddit and just comments on every web page where you can just go ahead and throw your voice out there, and it's just gotten louder and louder and louder and louder. It kind of makes you miss the days of radio. One thing I want to talk about that we talked a little bit about is the music in these two movies. Both of these soundtracks at one point in my life were on really heavy rotation. The Good Morning Vietnam soundtrack is not just the music from the movie, but there's also bits of Robin Williams radio segments sprinkled throughout. So the entire soundtrack sounds like you're actually listening to the Saigon radio station, which I thought was kind of a cool idea. That's one reason why I have so many of the his bits memorized, because I listened to that album so much. And then later on, junior high, high school, Pump Up the Volume came along, and it's such a diverse album. I mean, there's just so many different kinds of genres and music acts all contained into this one album. And that's, I think, a credit to the music supervisor and Alan Moyle for not saying, oh, this is Mark. I mean, he'd obviously listened to, some pre-grunge stuff, and that's, we're going to make an album of pre-grunge stuff. But for him to throw in Ice Cube and the Beastie Boys and Leonard Cohen and Concrete Blonde, I mean, the Pixies, it's just a fun, diverse album. And it's one I put on a lot because it hits a lot of check boxes with me. Concrete Blonde's Everybody Knows cover is so good, and Wave of Mutilation by the Pixies is probably one of my top 10 songs. I absolutely just love it. So so I mean, that's pretty much everything I have to say about these two movies. I think they're both exceptional. One speaks to me a little bit more than the other because my generation's more the Pump Up the Volume generation than the Vietnam generation, obviously, but I mean, I can certainly understand why for older people it would flip the other way around. So fine, you guys can talk. You want to talk? Who wants to talk?
Yeah, sure, I'll talk. The music in these movies, we'll talk about that quick. Good Morning Vietnam. It's like every Vietnam movie has to have a certain set of some of these songs in it. There's like a Columbia record house or whatever, where you only get so many CDs to choose from each month. You got to have some. But I give them credit. They stayed away from, I don't think there was any Creedence Clearwater. I don't think there was any of those other popular like anti-war songs. I I did like the addition, whoever's idea it was, to give Bruno Kirby a super loud horn to punctuate his jokes. I thought was pretty funny. That goes, I guess, with the sound mixing, but that was a funny decision. And we didn't mention during acting, but his what?
I was just going to say, thank goodness we don't have one of those.
Oh,
a
God,
really
yes.
loud, annoying horn.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. You're welcome.
But there was a scene that a line that Bruno Kirby delivered. I should have talked about this in acting. That was such a combination of delusional, sad, and funny at the same time, where he tells the general, "I know in my heart I'm funny." And I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so sad.
Yes.
That's like me standing in front of the mirror every morning and being like, you are handsome. You know for sure you are good looking and people like you. It's just sad. But anyways, the music, the music in Pump Up the Volume would have been a little past my time. I've heard some of it. I've never been a big Leonard Cohen fan, which he gets a lot of airtime in this movie. But if you're into that, that's cool. I like what Tom said, though. There's quite a variety, and I think it goes along to kind of highlight his multifaceted personality and his enjoyment with things. What did stick out to me about the music is being very much in that era of censorship, where it was it was kind of taboo publicly to play Ice-T, NWA, Ice Cube, where that was seen as like an open act of rebellion. People didn't do that. For me, as I got older, it was more about blasting like heavy metal music, but that very aggressive rap music, to play that in like a school setting and things like that was a form of childhood rebellion. So I did jive with that, and I like that. Good Morning Vietnam, Mike kind of mentioned it in the directing. It's kind of flatly shot. I think the camera moves and everything are much more interesting at Pump Up the Volume. But Good Morning Vietnam does benefit a lot from having the built-in production value of being in a jungle setting and using some very official-looking buildings and having local actors and things like that. Pump Up the Volume is really confined to a few spaces. It's like a baseball field, a school, a basement, upstairs sometimes, and then of course you get the obligatory chase to end the movie. But that's really about it. It's a very small, kind of self-contained movie in that way. I don't know. Both these movies really kind of missed me. I'm way too young for the Vietnam generation, and I never was into Vietnam movies. I think Tom mentioned it early. Once you've seen something like Platoon, it's hard to watch any other Vietnam movies and not compare it to things like that. I think this is another movie that was listed on Amazon Prime as like a feel-good movie, and I don't think that that's true either. I think that, they certainly listed Pump Up the Volume as like a comedy/drama. It's much more of a drama. The only comedy really in the movie is his early Howard Stern shtick of being like a dirty shock jock DJ. But the rest of the movie is very serious and about serious topics, so it's kind of misleading. Same thing with Good Morning Vietnam. You have Robin Williams delivering tons and tons of jokes, but it's a very serious matter. There's a point in the movie where they basically send him on a mission hoping he'll get killed. It's very dark and very kind of evil and sinister at that point. But like Mike mentioned, that's almost inconsequential. It's so short and glossed over that there's like no stakes at the end. To me, they're very average movies. They don't hold a place in my heart, like for some of you guys with Pump Up the Volume, seeing it when you were kids and then embedding itself in your memory. I'd maybe heard the name. I think I had it confused with Gleaming the Cube, to be honest, because it's like another Christian Slater movie that I've heard. It has a funny name and I've never seen it. But I did not know what to expect until I saw it. And then the turn it took was really surprising. So I have to give it a lot of credit for having the guts to do that. And it was a very serious look at like the apathy and problems facing that generation. So, and I'm babbling at this point, so I'm going to just stop cold and put my microphone down.
Kyle, you mentioned the music and things like Ice-T and NWA and how that was a rebellious thing out of the box. That was before the PMRC and the explicit lyric stickers that were on albums. Like that's kind of a big deal. And that evidently that's a generational thing, but I remember when CDs didn't have that kind of stuff. I remember when they first
sure.
I remember when they were stickers before they were printed on the labels. So like having that kind of rise against, the norms was a big deal. And then of course, even more so, it was being played on a radio, because that like the FCC right there, you're killing the FCC, and it was pirate radio on top of that. I think it's really fascinating that we have all said basically the same thing about the way that A to B to C happens in both of these movies. A starts off with this kind of lighthearted, some of the funny, like you said, the Howard Stern sticks, the shock jock kind of stuff, and the Robin Williams getting crazy and everything. And then B really takes a downward turn and becomes this more serious movie. And then C just kind of wraps everything up to get us over. And it's very interesting that two movies that the only real common thread is radio have such similar flows to get through the story. And they both start out with kind of this high lightheartedness and go dark really fast. I find that really fascinating. And two movies that technically have nothing to do with each other and no common thread except for radio.
Right. And two different generations.
And two completely different generations. And they have the exact same flow to their theme. I think that's really fascinating. I don't know who put these two together, but
Mark does go to jail at the end. I mean,
yeah, but the guy gets told that he needs a blowjob, and then he gets sent to Guam. Yeah. It's kind of like going to jail.
Yeah, but that was JT Walsh.
No, I know. I'm just pointing out. Well, I mean, Adrian got sent home from doing the thing he loved, which was, entertaining on the radio.
A kind of prison.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at the same kind of flow from the A to B to C that we've all kind of really talked about. I think that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I will say about the music, when I was younger and through most of my teens and into my 20s, when I was working for the lawn service, the crew chief that I worked with in my 20s, and that he listened to a local radio station, which was just oldies. And so all the 60s and 70s music was just kind of ingrained in me at that time. So anytime I hear the music, like what they played in, Good Morning Vietnam, it just kind of takes me back, and not takes me back to Vietnam or to that era, just an appreciation of that music for what it is. And then Pump Up the Volume. I mean, I remember listening to a few of those songs with my friend's older brother. He would play that for us because he could go out and buy those albums, and we would listen to them with him. And so that brings me back to different memories, right? Like kind of the musical awakening from what my parents listened to finding my own voice in music. So yeah, both of these kind of hit me with, oh, that's a good song. That's a good song. In different ways for me. I have a very eclectic taste when it comes to music. But I still say that both movies kind of hurry up and get things done quick. And I think it's more obvious with Good Morning Vietnam. But I'm just going to repeat everything that we've said, which is Pump Up the Volume still works today, right? Like it still works, there are still kids out there that feel they don't have a voice or being bullied or are different and have don't have access to an outlet. And it's that's kind of sad. And I think that's why it still angers me about it being labeled as a comedy. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that growing up, you had a neighbor that would play the oldies and you'd hear all the 60s and 70s. And now we say oldies and it's, crisscross jump is the oldies station. When you hear crisscross jump in an elevator, yeah.
Or when you're grocery shopping. And
groceries.
You're like, this came out in the 90s. Oh, God.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing how many of our listeners know who you're talking about.
Oh, hey, real quick, too. I just want to say the score. When Adrian and Ton are chasing, there's the chase scene where he finds out he's in the VC and they're chasing. The score during that scene is awful.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like,
yeah.
It was weird. It was like 1968.
It doesn't make
British
sense.
Spy movie. It was yeah. Like I was like, hurry up and catch him so this fucking song can end.
Hey, they only had so many licensings, right? And they spent it on a couple others. So
God, who scored those?
Yeah, a few others. Yeah. Okay, fellas. Any other thoughts on the overall category?
I believe we have played this record enough.
Uh-huh.
All right. Let's do some voting. Yeah. I think the best. Well, I don't know that it was kind of slow motion and reverse. It was kind of funny when Robin Williams did that, where he did the slow motion. But I think my favorite one is from Ace Ventura, when he does the let's do that in an instant replay, and he goes backwards.
Rolls everything backwards. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's freaking awesome. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's vote on this. Okay, let's start with Tom.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Poem of the Vine.
Okay. And Kyle?
Going completely against everything else I've done tonight, I will vote for Good Morning Vietnam.
All right. And Mike?
I'm with Kyle here. Good Morning Vietnam.
Okay. And finally, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm on the fence. I think I'm going to go against everything I voted tonight, too, and Good Morning Vietnam.
What the hell is going on here? That makes no sense, any of you.
It does.
No, it doesn't. You're confusing our listeners. Stop confusing our listeners.
They rely on us for
look what direction
intelligent, educated opinions on these movies.
It's a podcast, not an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
M. Shyamalan Ding Dong.
Yeah, we need a quick twist at the end for everybody.
Actually, maybe they want that.
Universe.
The guy that scored Good Morning Vietnam is Alex North, and he got started in 1937. So
there you go.
There you go.
That explains a couple of things.
Yeah, more than a couple.
Give me a little violin, see?
I'm going to show you how we did it on Spartacus.
Oh, no, they don't like it. Bill, play me out.
So we're on the set of Cleopatra. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, just a couple more final smacktoids for you. When Robin Williams' character is entertaining the troops, the men in the transport trucks are from America's famed 1st Infantry Division.
Oh, the big red one.
Yes, which can be seen by the fact that they have the big red one shoulder patches on their uniforms. Now, I don't know. It doesn't. The source didn't really indicate if they were actually real soldiers But I got the impression from that scene that they might have been, because as we discussed before, that scene was it seemed very kind of improvised. Like Robin Williams was just there, like entertaining these guys, and they shot it and they took the best parts out of it. So I think some of them may have been real soldiers. And then for Pump Up the Volume, there are legal issues that come with it being made before digital distribution even existed that need to be resolved. And it's far from the only movie from this era that's not available digitally. And here at this point, I need to thank Andrew for hosting his Plex server. Otherwise, I would not have been able to watch Pump Up the Volume in time. So thank you, Andrew, for providing me that. And that says
Just
Go
so
ahead.
you know, both Good Morning Vietnam and Pump Up the Volume are DVD pulls because I couldn't find either one of them digitally, so they're off of old DVDs.
Yeah. Well, and that is the case. I couldn't find Pump Up the Volume anywhere.
It's on Amazon streaming.
No, it's not.
It wasn't.
No,
it said it was at one time, but it's not. Yeah. So it says every one of the dozens of songs that appear in Pump Up the Volume would have to be re-licensed before it could legally be available. And that might not be so easy. For example, when a rarity by the Beastie Boys called Scenario, that the group has never officially released in any form, is directly referenced, played, and rapped over in the film. Even the film's soundtrack isn't on audio streaming services. So Pump Up the Volume, we're sorry to our listeners that Pump Up the Volume may be difficult to find and watch, but I think some of us would definitely encourage you to do so if you could. But there's some
copies. I got 2 copies of the soundtrack on CD if anybody wants it. Just give me a call.
Sweet.
$50.
We're promoting digital piracy on this show. We can pirate just about anything for you.
No, I'm going to actually sell them.
Wait. Hold
Small
on.
fee.
What's happening?
No, I take that back. No,
Wait, no.
I wasn't supposed to
sell
say
the
that.
CDs. I'm going to sell the CDs for $50.
Gabe
I'm not going to rip them for you. That would be illegal.
Gabe, you're never going to be asked to host again.
That's
Gabe,
because
you're
we'll
the
be in
best at
jail.
selling tapes.
Thank God.
He's selling out our podcast.
We can only provide them, however, on cassette tape or 8-track. That's the only way we can provide them. No digital content.
Our next episode is going to be Green Mile versus Shawshank Redemption. It's going to get real.
Live from prison.
Right.
Live from prison.
Live. Yeah, we're broadcasting from the penitentiary today. Okay.
We're
All right. Well,
Folsom Prison.
While the digital monkeys calculate the final outcome of this episode, why don't we do a few recommendations? Let's start with Kyle.
Wait, are they digital monkeys? I thought we employed real
They
monkeys.
are now. Yeah, we can't afford real monkeys anymore. They're digital now.
Stupid Peter.
They're AI monkeys.
I'm very scared to ask what happened to the real monkeys.
Don't ask.
Okay.
They were humanely released back into the wild.
Released.
Yeah, humanely given the sweet release.
Yes. I'm not sure what
I-
we're talking about there.
I saw Planet of the Apes. It was a good move.
You got to nip it in the bud.
Yeah, you got to get them
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah, get them out. Don't.
So-
No access to books or any of that kind of shit.
I'm going to recommend a movie that I can't believe hasn't been recommended before. I think we talked about it maybe on the last episode, or I was just talking about it with somebody. But my mom came over and I wanted to watch a movie, but there are a lot of movies that keep her attention unless they're like Lonesome Dove or rom-coms or whatever. So I was like, hey, have you ever seen 12 Angry Men? It's this movie from 1957, black and white movie. And I've seen it a couple times and I remember it being really good. So we watched 12 Angry Men. And man, it is a really, really good film that I think everybody should watch. And not just for the content, which is amazing. The acting is incredible. The directing is incredible. The setting is great. But also because it kind of rekindled and reminded me how much I love black and white movies. It looked so beautiful and classy, and it was such an enjoyable experience to revisit it. So I'll recommend that everybody watch 12 Angry Men. I have not seen the remake. I can only speak to the 1957 version, but that movie is well worth a watch.
Yeah, and that's a great recommendation, Kyle. And I think my mom would put that on the top of her list, and I think that's on many lists of favorite films. And it seems like when you think about the concept of it, it seems kind of strange. You know, like, how can this be such a good film where they're like, it's basically a jury. You know, how could this be all that interesting? But yeah, I think that's a really great recommendation. How about Mike?
Oh boy. Well, I wanted to try and keep it in some kind of our genre, so I went with another movie about radio. This one's directed by Mel Smith. It was written by none other than George Lucas, Willard Huyck, and Gloria Katz. It stars Brian Benben, Mary Stuart Masterson, Ned Beatty, George Burns, Michael McKean, Stephen Tobolowsky, Jeffrey Tambor, Christopher Lloyd, Larry Miller. Like, it is another large cast of great character actors. And that movie is Radioland Murders. I have not seen it in a while, but I remember really enjoying the movie when it came out. And I actually put it in one of the first videos I ever edited for a class. So there you go. Radioland Murders.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. Have to check that one out. And Andrew.
I'm doing a movie. I'm going to stay with the war theme, but wrong war. So I'm moving up to World War II. And actually a movie that would probably surprise a lot of people that has Ant-Man in it. And of course, it has some pretty other iconic folk, like Tom Wilkinson is in it. Mark Strong is in it. We all love our Mark Strong here in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it is based on a true story of Mo Berg, the baseball player who ends up becoming a spy and going behind lines to infiltrate and kill the scientist that is developing the atomic bomb for the Germans. And that movie is The Catcher Was a Spy. And it is a very, very good movie. It's very fun. It has a very similar thematic A, B to C, where it starts off cute and funny and lighthearted and gets dark really fast, and then moves into some pretty heavy topics to talk about. But it's based on a true story. So, I mean, they probably embellished a bit, but yeah, it's pretty outstanding. So highly recommended. The Catcher Was a Spy.
Cool. Yeah, I've never heard of that one either. That sounds awesome, actually. And you can't go wrong with, is it Mark Strong? Our guy?
Yeah.
Did I get it wrong?
Strong.
Yeah, Mark Strong. Yeah,
Mark Strong. Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that. Okay, Tom.
So I'm going to pick another Robin Williams radio movie. This would have been his third nomination for Best Actor. 1992, directed by Terry Gilliam and co-stars with Jeff Bridges, and it's called The Fisher King.
Mm-hmm.
It is a wonderful, powerful, deep, fun, at times funny movie about a DJ who, this sounds familiar, says the wrong thing and some people get killed. And then all that, I'm not giving anything away, that all happens right away in the first couple minutes. And then it's about him trying to heal himself and the people he hurt. And it's Terry Gilliam, so it's visually a very just a stunning movie to watch. There were five Academy nominations came out of the movie. Mercedes Rule won Best Supporting Actress for her role in this, and she's amazing. One nominated for Best Screenplay. But Robin Williams is exceptional, and it's really good. Last time I checked, it's my wife's favorite movie, so definitely worth a check out. And Fisher King.
Yeah, coincidentally, I saw a little bit of that on TV just the other day.
Really?
I was surprised.
Another one I'm surprised it's never been recommended on our show.
Yeah, and I don't know that we've talked a lot about Terry Gilliam films either. Have we? Have we done any?
We did. We talked about 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
About once a year. Yeah. That's what I think. It's what.
Yeah. That's another good one. Okay, so I'm going to recommend a documentary about Robin Williams called "Come Inside My Mind," and it's I watched it on HBO. I don't know exactly where it's available. You might be able to get it on Amazon and that kind of thing. But it's a documentary that's largely Robin Williams' own words and his footage of his stand-up routines and interviews and that kind of thing. And they do interview some other important people in his life. And if you want to laugh and cry simultaneously, this is the documentary for you, because I literally, Jill was talking to me tonight and she said, did you end up watching that? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And I said, did you not hear me? Because I was down in the basement watching this and I was laughing out loud. Like, I haven't laughed out loud like that in a long time. But the whole time I had tears streaming down my face, because you kind of know, that the ending already. But it was really fantastic and really fun to watch. So I would definitely recommend Robin Williams' Come Inside My Mind.
Nice.
Excellent.
Okay, so I think it's time to get to the results. The digital monkeys have done their work. The real monkeys have not become sentient in the same way that we are yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is Pump Up the Volume!
Wow. When this was on the docket, I did not think this is the way it was going to go.
Me either.
Yeah, I didn't either. You feel like something with Robin Williams and something is kind of regarded as kind of a classic, like Good Morning Vietnam is, that it would just pump up the volume out of the water. But no, we got a tally of 10-6.
Yeah, but that's one of the big reasons we do the show, though, is that when you start picking Good Morning Vietnam apart, there's not much there as we thought there was, in terms of, there seemed to be a lot of montages and stuff. They just set up the camera and let it run. So, and I think they kind of got dinged for that. So,
but to overemphasize, as we always say, that does not mean that one movie is bad over the other. They're both. I will rewatch both of these movies to our listeners.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I highly recommend that you watch both of these movies.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about some of these episodes. It's like, I wouldn't call this lopsided necessarily, but sometimes it's like, well, both of these movies are really good, but we're kind of forced to pick one in the voting, and it becomes unbalanced maybe sometimes, but in many cases, both movies are actually really great movies and enjoyable to watch, and I actually enjoyed both of these quite a bit.
Agreed.
Yep, same.
Okay, well, thank you, Cinesmacketeers, for listening. Please leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. If you want to listen to an unedited version of the show, you can catch us live on Twitch whenever we record an episode. In May, we're going old school and throwing a couple of classics into the ring when Gone with the Wind faces off against The Wizard of Oz. For Kyle, Mike, Andrew, Tom, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Arizona Stink Studio.
Yeah, that was my major fuck up in this whole.
Well, Andrew, it's been nice having you on the show.
Yeah.
Well, there goes the rest of your guys' benefits that I'm paying out to keep the show on the air.
Oh yeah. No more twitching.
Oh.
Yeah, geez.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.